Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Shane Plays review, I guess, sort of first look thoughts on Immortal Men. Number one, the Immortal Men, number one from DC Comics, part of the new age of DC heroes, new age of heroes. I've seen it printed out both ways. Springing from Dark Knight's Metal. This is, I think, the fourth or maybe fifth series that's come out so far. There's more to come. And it's Metal's finished with now. I was looking in the back to see if they had one of those ads showing all the different Dark Knights or New Age of Heroes stuff to come, but I guess they're not printing those anymore. Now that they've already started coming out or substantially started coming out. Anyway, it's Metal has finished that crazy 6-issue series with some related one-shots. And, I've been saying in these videos as I've been reviewing these New Age of Heroes series, first issues of the series, I'm like, I want to see how this stuff ties into Metal. And so far, the series that have come out either loosely tie into Metal or don't at all. And in fact, in the final issue of Metal towards the end, they're kind of like talking about things are changing and here's what's to come. And there's like one or two panels maybe that mention like new heroes to come. And it's just kind of a little montage kind of new heroes or new characters that are coming. And they're the New Age of Heroes characters, not all of them, and that's all it was, and you're like, well, okay. So when they say, they keep saying from Dark Knight's Metal, it's like right there. So not really, other than the fact that Metal had kind of changed the DC universe as a springboard for moving forward with the Dark Multiverse, which admittedly is pretty cool and can make for some interesting storytelling, and that's kind of where the Terrifics was messing with and all that. But also, they've evidently broken through the source wall. And in DC cosmology, it's been established for a long time. I think source wall is as far as it goes. That's that thing, the New Gods kind of fourth world thing is this source wall with all these kind of like stone. They're not statues. I think they're living beings that have been bonded with it, but then they turn to stone. Anyway, it's kind of a famous image or thing from DC Comics lore. Anyway, so they've broken through the source wall, and now you have the Dark Multiverse. So things are changing. So I think that really the way that, the New Age of Heroes springs from the pages of Metal is just that Metal kind of set things up to move forward and have new things in the DC universe. But like all of these series, like all of their origins aren't tied into Metal, right? Unless the break into the source wall and all this other stuff that happened in Metal, like changed reality, and there's all these new characters that have existed for a while. Like the Immortal Men have been around for a long time, according to this first issue. Now, just as a quick history lesson, the Immortal Man is a character from DC history that's been around for a long time. In one form or another, was supposedly written out of continuity and Crisis on Infinite Earths, but of course has come back. I think was part of a group called like the Forgotten Heroes, and has sort of a connection with Vandal Savage. And Vandal Savage, as you're probably aware, is basically the caveman who became immortal by like touching a meteorite, and has been a major enemy in the DC universe. In fact, there's something that happens in this. Now, Vandal Savage does not show up in this issue, but there's something that's said that I'm like, well, I feel like Vandal Savage is going to tie into this somehow. Anyway, so the Immortal Man's been around forever. He's, for the most part, been a good guy. And he was written out of DC continuity, came back after Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think has been a woman at different points. And I don't know what the current status of the Immortal Man is, but now you have the Immortal Men. And I remember reading, they've been having all these interviews in DC, like they have that that final page in a lot of DC comics where they interview an artist or a writer or something about a series or something that's coming. And I remember one of the creators saying, we're wanting to use names that we already had and maybe find fresh ways to use those names. So, DC already had Damage, and now there's a new Damage character, and now, you got the Immortal Man. Well, now you got the Immortal Men, that sort of thing. So in Brimstone, I'm pretty sure that I'm almost positive that that big hulking flaming thing that came out of, I think it was in DC the Legends miniseries back in the 80s, and I think at one time was an enemy of Firestorm. I think that thing was called Brimstone, if I remember right. Big giant thing. So they're reusing some of the names, which, to be honest, that's probably legal and financial reasons because they've already established ownership of those names. But this creator may have even been Jim Lee, who's the penciler on this series, or at least this issue. I've heard there's a lot of shakeups happening at DC with these New Age of Heroes books where, like, yeah, we got this creative team lined up, and then after just a few issues, it's changing. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, it may have even been Jim Lee who said, hey, we're trying to, we have all these names that let's breathe fresh life into. So hence the Immortal Men. Now, the creators on this, the main creators, are Jim Lee, Ryan Benjamin, and James Tynion. I hope I'm saying that right. The fourth. Those are the quote-unquote storytellers. That's what they're saying these days in these New Age books. They say storytellers. They don't break it down by artist or writer. And in fact, there's a new emphasis at DC on the artist. Very important. Whereas the writer usually gets top billing, and now it's they're trying to give emphasis to the artist, which should be, but it should be equal. Don't turn don't tip it too far the other way, and because it's the writer and the artist, and really the colorist. Everybody is important. The inkers, the penciler, everybody's important to the process, right? So. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I think that a lot of people will be interested in this series, or at least this first issue, because Jim Lee is penciling it. And I think he's like the editor-in-chief of, let's see. I think he's like the editor-in-chief, or he's a high position at DC Comics these days. Let me see if I can find it. It's in this stuff in the back. Yeah. Dan DiDio is the publisher. Jim Lee's a publisher. Then Jeff Johns is the president and CEO. So there you go. So, and then Diane Nelson is the president. So yeah, Jim Lee's pretty high up in DC Comics, and now here he is penciling a book. So a lot of people will probably be interested in the Immortal Men just because of that. Now, I like Jim Lee fine. I don't dislike him, but I don't think, a lot of people are like, man, he's the most amazing penciler ever, and they love his pencils, and that's great. I'm not against that, but that's that's not why I personally am like, the Immortal Men. I want to read the Immortal Men. One, I'm reading all of the first issues of the New Age of Heroes just to check out the New Age of Heroes. But if I keep reading this, which I probably will, it'll be because of the story. And the whole thing, not just one particular storyteller. And I will say, out of all the series that they talked about and listed and previewed and teased coming for New Age of Heroes, I have to say Immortal Men was probably pretty low on. I was like, I don't know, I'm not that excited about it. But I'll read it and give it a shot. And having done that, I'm glad I did, because I actually liked it a lot better than I thought. It's an interesting setup. And, it looks like there might be some interesting storytelling going on. Now, as with the other New Age of Heroes comics, the cover is a trifold cover. Let you get a good look at that. And that character there is a character called The Hunt, and he is an antagonist. Let's see here. And then on the back, you get this continuing, it's like big montage of all the New Age of Heroes characters. So I'm guessing if everybody gets all the first issues and they don't mind sacrificing their covers, then they can make this huge mural to cover an entire wall, basically, or at least a good part of a wall of all of the New Age of Heroes characters. Now, so to the story itself, it's basically there's a young, I guess, a teenager in New York City named Caden Park, and he keeps having dreams that he's running for his life, and he usually gets killed in his dreams by some assailant. But when he makes it, then he makes it to a place called the campus, and he just knows that, he's supposed to be there, but he doesn't know why. And there's this man, I don't know if you can see that there, this old man with the eyes. He looks at the eyes, and they tell him that he's that this is real and this isn't just a dream, and he should escape here. And you'll find out later that this older guy, the guy with the beard and all of that, and the piercing eyes, is the Immortal Man, if I'm understanding correctly. And for centuries, he's been gathering certain types of people together. Basically, they're not mutants. I guess have the metagen. I don't know. They're superpowered humans, and he's been enlisting them in this war that's been going on for a long time. And he enlists them and says, you'll live forever, and you need to fight to save the world. Now, Caden keeps being told, like, by a psychiatrist, that these are just dreams, and it's an escape in your mind, and all of this stuff. But he's like, I really feel like it's real. So he's like, well, I feel like it's real, but he keeps being told it's not. And what'll eventually happen is you find out that there is this, it's 1 mile, this says 1 mile beneath Philadelphia, but it says the campus, established 1732 in the domain of action, which is the 5th house of the Immortals. So what's happening is they're setting up this really interesting clans, houses of immortals that have been, I guess, waging war for a long time underground. And this war has been coming to a head, and most of the domain of action, the house of action, which is what the protagonists belong to, has just been wiped out, except for a very few surviving members. And they, so this young man, Caden, is about to get drawn into a very dangerous situation where both and I still don't know, I don't know if they're good guys or bad guys. So I'll say protagonist and antagonist are hunting for him. Some to recruit him and save his life, and others to kill him. There's this character called The Hunt, which I pointed out earlier, that he hunts down and kills other immortals. And he works for, let's see, her name is the Infinite Woman, if you can see her there. And it says here, the oldest living human, founder of Conquest, the 1st house of the Immortals. So there's another house. So we've got the House of Action, and now we have, I guess, the House of Conquest. And she talks about her brother bringing all this on himself, which I guess, is the Immortal Man, or whoever that older guy is, who's sort of, the leader of the house that just got its rear kicked, as you'll find out as you read through this. But what I want to point out here is she's the oldest living human. Well, from what I understand, Vandal Savage and the Immortal Man have been established to be the oldest living humans in DC lore and continuity or whatever. So this is what leads me to believe that at some point, I mean, how can you tell a story about immortals in conflict without, houses of immortals and this entire established society of immortals without Vandal Savage somehow coming into it. So that's why I believe Vandal Savage will come into this at some point. Now, what you also find out on the next pages is there's the Batman who laughs, and there's his little crows, his little robins that say crow, 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 straight from the pages of Metal, and they've been working together. And he's somehow encouraging, hey, you're immortals. You should be the most powerful beings on the planet. I'm trying to push this along and make you on the top of the food chain. So, I doubt that the Batman who laughs has their best interest at heart. So I'm sure he's got some ulterior motives or wants to, use the situation somehow. And the Batman who laughs is a very cool character. I mean, not cool as in Wes is a good person. I mean, he's an evil, nasty thing, but very compelling, interesting character who came out of Metal, and in my opinion was, really stole the show. Barbados, however you want to say it, was supposed to be the big baddie, but the Batman who laughs and his little robins that he keeps on chains and they go crow, 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 in my opinion, stole the show. So it's interesting and to see him show up. And if I remember right, at the end of Metal, you thought that he got defeated, if I remember right, but yet here he is. So anyway. All right. So, Caden ends up, getting attacked by, and I'm skipping some stuff here, but maybe you'll read the issue yourself. Caden ends up falling into a trap and getting attacked by these things called the Bloodless, which are mentioned several times in the series. And they're just nasty. I guess they work for the bad guys. And he's about to get himself killed on a subway train when the remaining Immortal Men show up to save his bacon. And they make a nice entrance. They show up. He's about to get killed. And I love this line that, let me see if I can remember this guy's name. Hold on a second. Reload. This is Reload right there. So I love what he says. He's talking to the kid, and the bad guy is saying heroes only save the world for a moment. In the great infinite expanse of time, they do nothing, and neither will you. And then the Immortal Men show up, and Reload says, don't listen to her, kid. I can tell you how to save the world. And I love this. He says, it's in every swing of the axe, every strike of the claw. It's in the judgment of good men with righteous intent. And Kane's like, who are you? He said, you know the answer. You've always known. It's like the Immortal Men. And then they show up, and that's where it ends. So I'm intrigued. I'm going to give this a few issues. There's I'll kind of introduce this, and evidently this group of Immortal Men is the only surviving group from that entire House of Action. That they just had a huge fight, big ambush. They were almost all wiped out, and they fled. They even talk about that in the series, in this issue, they're giving Reload a hard time for fleeing. And he's like, if we had stayed, we would have died. And, we've got a mission. We have something to do. And, they're going to save the kid here. So not only they're saving the kid, but, they've just lost basically the world that they knew. Now, the characters here, the kind of pulpy looking guy, almost Green Hornet kind of guy, is named Ghost Fist. I don't know if you can see that. And then there's Stray, and Stray is the kind of animal-looking person right there. Of course, that's Reload. I've already pointed that out. And then this is Timber right there. So I don't know everybody's powers yet, but that's basically the group that we're introduced to, plus Caden. And then the big, old immortal guy who evidently has been recruiting people and saying, you'll live forever and we have to save the world. That kind of thing. I assume we'll come into it at some point. I assume that's the Immortal Man himself. But anyway, again, this is where it ends with the, with these four So I guess, that these four plus Caden will be the core good guys, if you will, at least at the beginning. And then, they're teasing this much bigger world of the Immortals, that's been in the DC universe, evidently, unbeknownst to the average person or even average superhuman, um, that's been kind of going on underground or behind the scenes. So there you go. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. This is one of those that, if I had to, definitely, let's say, I had to dump half of them and could only read the other half of these new series coming out, I'd probably stick with the Immortal Men. I liked what I saw. So there you go. Have you read it? Did you like it? Let me know your thoughts. What do you think? Are there elements here in this that have been brought into DC before that I'm not aware of? Because all this, the domains and the houses and the underground, like Mile Underground and War and all these Immortals and all, I don't remember any of that from DC history, but maybe it was there and I just didn't know about it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we will definitely catch you next time on Shane Plays as I continue to review, and I've already got Brimstone here that I need to review and get to, and there'll be other new series coming out, I think, over the next few months of the new Age of Heroes. So we will catch you next time on Shane Plays.